In the quiet dawn of ancient Greece, a gentle light touched the stones of the Acropolis. The city stirred, wrapped in whispers of gods and the promise of wisdom. Among marble columns and olive trees, one presence reigned above all others. Athena, goddess of wisdom, protector of balance, keeper of knowledge's eternal flame. Her gift was not a weapon of war, nor a crown of gold. It was a flame that burned without smoke, without end, a beacon for seekers of truth. They called it the flame of knowledge, a light that fed the hungry spirit. Travelers came from far lands, drawn not by riches, but by understanding. The flame promised clarity when the world grew uncertain. It shone upon philosophers, poets, artisans, and dreamers. Each heart that gazed upon it carried a spark of its brilliance home. And so Athens lived not only by stone and sword, but by thought and wonder. This is the story of that flame, its keepers, and its lessons. A story of wisdom that defied time and silence. Lean closer and follow the path where light and myth entwine. For the eternal knowledge flame of Athena still burns, waiting for you. Beneath the vast sky of Attica, the city of Athens stirred like a living poem of stone and spirit. Its streets wound through hills where olive groves whispered secrets to the rising sun. The Parthenon, crowned with light, stood tall as a guardian of memory and devotion. Every dawn, citizens lifted their eyes to its marble glow, a reminder of divine protection. The air carried scents of bread, oil, and the sea, weaving daily life into sacred rhythm. Children laughed in courtyards, their games echoing among the columns of ancient houses. Merchants called out, offering spices, fabrics, and stories from distant shores. Philosophers walked the squares, their words sowing seeds of thought among eager listeners. Every stone seemed carved with purpose, every shadow shaped by myth and meaning. For Athens was not just a city of walls and markets, but a sanctuary of wisdom. At its heart lay the promise of knowledge, lit by the eternal flame of Athena. The goddess did not rule with fear, but with guidance, a hand of balance and clarity. Her watchful gaze was said to linger over rooftops, temples, and the smallest home. And the people believed her presence flowed through every library, scroll, and spoken word. When the wind rustled the olive leaves, many swore they heard her gentle counsel. The city thrived not only by trade and harvest, but by the pursuit of thought itself. Questions were treasured more than answers, for inquiry was the gift of the goddess. Men and women gathered to speak of justice, virtue, beauty, and the stars above. The Agora, filled with voices, became a living stage of wisdom and debate. Even the humblest shepherd carried tales of Athena's wisdom flame to the hills. The city bore her name, a symbol of protection and a vow to honor her gift. This was not the silence of fear, but the harmony of learning and growth. Stone by stone, Athens rose as a monument to balance, knowledge, and divine light. At night, the flame flickered in the temple, a beacon seen from the farthest port. Sailors returning from the sea found comfort in its glow, steady as the stars. Farmers weary from toil lifted their eyes to it, finding hope in its endurance. The eternal flame was more than fire. It was memory, promise, and direction. Each spark carried stories of ancestors, philosophers, and dreamers yet to come. It bound the city together, a thread of gold weaving lives into shared purpose. To walk through Athens was to feel the weight of its wisdom and the warmth of its flame. Every citizen, from scholar to mason, believed they held a part of Athena's trust. The goddess asked no tribute of blood or treasure, only devotion to truth. And so the city became her temple, breathing her essence in stone and song. The flame's light reached beyond marble halls into the hearts of those who sought it. Athens grew not by conquest of lands, but by conquest of ignorance and fear. Its greatness lay not in weapons, but in the courage to question and to learn. The city, under Athena's gaze, shone like a lantern to the world beyond Greece. Travelers carried tales of its wisdom across seas, planting sparks in other lands. And still the citizens tended the flame, guarding it against neglect and forgetting. They knew it was not just fire and stone, but the very spirit of their goddess. The eternal knowledge flame was the city's pulse, its breath, its unending guide. And so Athens, beneath the dawn, lived as a story written by light itself. A story where wisdom was not distant, but present in every breath and step. This was the city under Athena's gaze, glowing with the brilliance of her eternal flame. Long before Athens was crowned with marble, the tale of the flame began in whispers of the divine. The gods gathered on Olympus, their voices rolling like thunder over mortal lands. They spoke of gifts to guide humanity, each deity offering strength, art, or survival. Athena, wise and serene, chose not to wield power through war or riches. Her gaze fell upon mortals, fragile yet full of restless curiosity and yearning. She saw their hunger for meaning, their thirst for knowledge, their spark waiting to ignite. And so she created a flame unlike any fire known to gods or men. It was not born of destruction, but of light, clarity, and vision. This flame did not consume wood or flesh, but instead nourished the spirit. It glowed with the brilliance of ideas, inventions, and the search for truth. The gods marveled, for this was a flame that burned without ash or smoke. It cast no shadow, yet it illuminated the deepest corners of thought. Zeus himself watched, both wary and admiring, of this quiet but powerful gift. For Athena had offered not might of hand, but might of the mind. She carried the flame down to the mortal world, descending in silence and grace. Upon a sacred altar in Athens, she set it gently, where stone met sky. The people gathered, drawn not by command, but by wonder and awe. They saw the fire flicker, golden and pure, yet strangely eternal. Children gasped, elders bowed, and poets whispered verses to capture its glow. The priests declared it divine, a bond between gods and the city. Athena spoke softly, her voice like wind through olive leaves. This flame is yours, a guide for your hearts and minds. Protect it, for it protects you. The people felt the weight of her words, both gift and responsibility. For the flame was not only light, but memory, hope, and destiny. It was said to mirror the hearts of those who stood near it. The honest found courage, the seekers found clarity, the doubtful found questions. And those who sought wisdom discovered it reflected their own unspoken truths. The city called it the eternal knowledge flame, a blessing beyond measure. No sacrifice of blood was asked, only the tending of thought and learning. It became the heartbeat of Athens, a symbol of its divine covenant. Every festival, the flame was honored with songs, hymns, and vows. Every newborn child was shown its glow, a promise of guidance for life. Every philosopher and teacher lit lamps from it, carrying sparks into schools. It spread from temple to home, from library to workshop, like rivers of light. The people swore to guard it, knowing neglect could dim its brilliance. Athena smiled, unseen yet present, watching the flame weave into daily life. For she had not only given fire, but planted an eternal reminder. That knowledge is sacred, that truth must be protected, that wisdom is light. Thus began the age of the flame, carried forward by each generation. It stood as a silent witness to love, debate, discovery, and song. The flame was more than fire. It was Athens' soul, glowing in every heart. And as the stars wheeled above, the people knew the goddess walked with them. For as long as the eternal flame burned, wisdom itself would never fade. In the quiet heart of Athens, the eternal flame burned, steady as the rhythm of the city itself. It was more than a symbol, for it demanded guardians to watch, to protect, to remember. The first keepers were chosen not for wealth or strength, but for devotion to wisdom. They were priests and priestesses, humble souls who understood the weight of the gift. Each morning, they rose before dawn, their steps light upon the temple's stone floor. They bowed before the flame, whispering vows of loyalty and gratitude. Their task was not to feed the fire with wood, for it asked none. Instead, they fed it with reverence, with care, with the offering of thought. They swept the marble halls, polished bronze vessels, and sang hymns of Athena's grace. The flame's glow fell across their faces, painting them with gold and quiet purpose. They kept records of its brightness, noting each flicker, each shimmer in scrolls of memory. It was said the flame responded to their hearts, burning stronger with honesty and truth. Those who entered with greed or malice felt its warmth turn distant, cold, unreachable. Thus the keepers became mirrors of the flame, carrying its light within themselves. They guided the people who came to seek wisdom, offering counsel beside its glow. Mothers brought their children, asking blessings for clarity and courage in their futures. Travelers asked for safe journeys, scholars asked for insight, leaders asked for fairness. The keepers listened, never claiming the wisdom as their own, but pointing to the flame. "It is not we who answer," they said, "but the light of Athena, eternal and pure." The temple became a living library, its silence filled with questions and prayers. At night, when the city slept, the keepers stayed, singing softly to the flame. Their voices rose like gentle waves, carrying stories of hope and remembrance. They believed each song was caught in the fire, becoming sparks for future generations. Even in times of storm, when thunder shook the hills, the flame never wavered. The keepers saw this as proof of Athena's watchful presence, her unseen hand. They guarded it not with swords, but with faith, patience, and endless devotion. The people trusted them, seeing in their quiet service a reflection of divine balance. Their robes were simple, woven from linen, dyed with the olive's gentle green. They wore no crowns, no jewels, for their honor was the closeness to the flame. When children asked what gave them strength, they smiled and pointed to the light. "The flame is within us," they said, "as long as we choose to listen." Over years, the role of keeper passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. It was never inherited by blood, but chosen by worth, by love of wisdom. Those unworthy could not remain, for the flame revealed every hidden shadow. Many keepers told of dreams in which Athena appeared, offering guidance or warning. They felt her presence in olive groves, in starlight, in the hush of night air. And always, she reminded them, the flame was not possession, but responsibility. They knew the world beyond Athens was restless, full of hunger and ambition. But within the temple, they built a sanctuary of thought, safe from noise and pride. The keepers were not perfect, but they were faithful, learning as they served. Each one left behind writings, reflections, and wisdom for those who would follow. Scrolls filled the temple's shelves, glowing in lamplight beside the eternal fire. To read them was to walk among voices of the past, still alive in words. Thus the keepers became threads in a tapestry, each one holding a part of Athena's gift. The flame, constant and bright, bound them together across time and memory. Athens grew, changed, and faced trials, but the keepers remained unshaken. They were guardians not of fire alone, but of truth, trust, and endless seeking. And as long as they stood in the temple's shadow, the flame would never fade. The eternal flame burned in its temple, yet its light reached far beyond marble walls and altars. It became a beacon for those whose hearts longed for knowledge, clarity, and creation. The first to gather near it were humble scribes, their fingers stained with ink and devotion. They copied verses, recorded laws, and etched ideas into scrolls by the glow of the fire. The flame gave them patience, as though time slowed when wisdom was near. Poets found their voices beneath its light, their words flowing like rivers of gold. They spoke of love, of beauty, of justice, weaving songs that lifted spirits. The city's youth came to hear, their imaginations catching sparks from every verse. Philosophers walked slowly around the temple, their steps guided by endless questions. They asked about the nature of truth, the meaning of virtue, and the balance of life. Each debate was a gift to the flame, each silence a space for thought to grow. The fire seemed to listen, its steady glow reflecting the rhythm of discourse. It was said that standing near the flame made difficult questions clearer. Ideas came not like thunder, but like dawn, gentle, steady, unstoppable. Inventors too found their inspiration here, sketching devices and tools by lamplight. From the flicker of fire, they saw the shapes of future wonders. Ships stronger, wheels smoother, instruments more precise, all born beside the flame. Even farmers walked into the temple, carrying soil on their hands and hope in their eyes. They asked the flame for wisdom in planting, harvesting, and caring for the earth. And in its glow, they found new ways to work with nature instead of against it. The flame did not answer in words, yet it spoke through clarity of thought. Each who stood before it left with more than they brought. The Agora, the marketplace of Athens, soon echoed with its influence. Merchants discussed not only trade, but fairness, equality, and the spirit of exchange. They believed profit gained without justice would never be blessed by the flame. So deals were struck with honor, and words carried weight equal to silver. Teachers lit small lamps from the eternal fire, carrying sparks into their schools. Their students gathered in courtyards, learning by its glow long after sunset. Children traced letters on wax tablets, their eyes bright with the fire of learning. They dreamed of a future guided by the wisdom Athena had given. The flame became a quiet companion to all who sought knowledge. It belonged not to kings or priests alone, but to every citizen. Some called it the silent philosopher, for it never spoke yet always taught. Travelers from distant lands came to Athens, drawn not by riches, but by this light. They returned home carrying stories of a city where wisdom was sacred. And in distant ports, lamps were kindled with sparks brought across the sea. Thus the flame grew beyond its temple, beyond Athens, beyond Greece itself. It became a chain of light, linking dreamers across mountains and oceans. For wherever knowledge was honored, the spirit of the flame was present. The citizens of Athens believed this was Athena's true gift to humanity. Not the stone temples, nor the treasures of gold, but the fire of thought itself. And so the eternal knowledge flame became the city's proudest treasure. Not because it burned, but because it inspired. Not because it consumed, but because it created. Every poem, every law, every invention carried its reflection. Every honest question was a spark rising to join its glow. The flame was not only in the temple, but in the minds of all who sought truth. And thus it became a beacon for scholars, artists, and seekers through the ages. The eternal flame burned in its temple, yet its light reached far beyond marble walls and altars. It became a beacon for those whose hearts longed for knowledge, clarity, and creation. The first to gather near it were humble scribes, their fingers stained with ink and devotion. They copied verses, recorded laws, and etched ideas into scrolls by the glow of the fire. The flame gave them patience, as though time slowed when wisdom was near. Poets found their voices beneath its light, their words flowing like rivers of gold. They spoke of love, of beauty, of justice, weaving songs that lifted spirits. The city's youth came to hear, their imaginations catching sparks from every verse. Philosophers walked slowly around the temple, their steps guided by endless questions. They asked about the nature of truth, the meaning of virtue, and the balance of life. Each debate was a gift to the flame, each silence a space for thought to grow. The fire seemed to listen, its steady glow reflecting the rhythm of discourse. It was said that standing near the flame made difficult questions clearer. Ideas came not like thunder, but like dawn, gentle, steady, unstoppable. Inventors too found their inspiration here, sketching devices and tools by lamplight. From the flicker of fire, they saw the shapes of future wonders. Ships stronger, wheels smoother, instruments more precise, all born beside the flame. Even farmers walked into the temple, carrying soil on their hands and hope in their eyes. They asked the flame for wisdom in planting, harvesting, and caring for the earth. And in its glow, they found new ways to work with nature instead of against it. The flame did not answer in words, yet it spoke through clarity of thought. Each who stood before it left with more than they brought. The Agora, the marketplace of Athens, soon echoed with its influence. Merchants discussed not only trade but fairness, equality, and the spirit of exchange. They believed profit gained without justice would never be blessed by the flame. So deals were struck with honor, and words carried weight equal to silver. Teachers lit small lamps from the eternal fire, carrying sparks into their schools. Their students gathered in courtyards, learning by its glow long after sunset. Children traced letters on wax tablets, their eyes bright with the fire of learning. They dreamed of a future guided by the wisdom Athena had given. The flame became a quiet companion to all who sought knowledge. It belonged not to kings or priests alone, but to every citizen. Some called it the silent philosopher, for it never spoke yet always taught. Travelers from distant lands came to Athens, drawn not by riches, but by this light. They returned home carrying stories of a city where wisdom was sacred. And in distant ports, lamps were kindled with sparks brought across the sea. Thus the flame grew beyond its temple, beyond Athens, beyond Greece itself. It became a chain of light, linking dreamers across mountains and oceans. For wherever knowledge was honored, the spirit of the flame was present. The citizens of Athens believed this was Athena's true gift to humanity. Not the stone temples, nor the treasures of gold, but the fire of thought itself. And so the eternal knowledge flame became the city's proudest treasure. Not because it burned, but because it inspired. Not because it consumed, but because it created. Every poem, every law, every invention carried its reflection. Every honest question was a spark rising to join its glow. The flame was not only in the temple, but in the minds of all who sought truth. And thus it became a beacon for scholars, artists, and seekers through the ages. The eternal knowledge flame was more than fire. It was a bridge between the mortal and the divine. As its light spread, people whispered that Athena herself walked unseen among the seekers. She was said to appear not in grandeur, but in silence, guiding minds through intuition. Some claimed they felt her hand when solutions arrived like sudden clarity. Others believed her presence lingered in dreams, where wisdom wore the shape of visions. The temple became not only a place of worship, but a sanctuary of reflection. Pilgrims climbed long roads to see the flame, not to pray for wealth, but for insight. They brought no sacrifices of blood or gold, only questions burning in their hearts. The priests of Athena welcomed them, teaching that the goddess asked nothing but honesty. "Bring your true self to the flame," they would say, "and you will leave wiser." Many nights, the temple stayed alive with quiet footsteps and whispered thoughts. A farmer sat beside a philosopher, both searching for meaning in the same glow. Their lives so different, yet their questions united them in the fire's embrace. This equality gave the flame even greater power, for wisdom was shared, not owned. No voice was too small, no thought too simple to be worthy of the light. Children too were welcomed, their laughter echoing under marble columns. Athena's flame seemed to burn brighter when innocence approached with wonder. They would ask questions so pure that even the elders paused to think deeply. Why is the sky endless? Where do ideas come from? What makes kindness strong? Such simple words often opened doors philosophers had never considered. The flame taught that truth was not found only in grand theories, but in small sparks. As generations passed, the eternal fire shaped Athens into a city of wisdom. Schools flourished, debates filled courtyards, and art bloomed in every corner. Even the streets seemed to hum with the rhythm of learning and discovery. Visitors described Athens not as rich in gold, but rich in thought. Its treasure was not locked in vaults, but spoken in conversations. And always, at the center, burned the flame that Athena had given. It never faltered, not in storm nor in drought, always steady in its purpose. Some said this was proof of the goddess's blessing, her eternal gift to mankind. Yet others believed its endurance came from the people who nurtured it with reverence. Every story told, every question asked, every answer pondered, fed the fire. It was alive in more ways than one, not only heat, but spirit. The philosophers called it a living symbol of logos, the order of reason itself. Poets described it as a heart, beating not for one, but for all. Inventors saw it as a spark waiting to leap into hands and tools. And children, in their innocence, said simply, "It is Athena's smile." Thus, the eternal knowledge flame became more than a gift. It was a companion, a guardian, and a teacher of the city. It reminded all who came that wisdom was not distant, but near. That clarity was not unreachable, but already within, waiting for light. And in this way, the flame endured not just in Athens, but in memory. For every soul that left the temple carried a spark in their heart. And from those sparks, the world beyond Athens began to glow. Legends say that one evening, as the sun dipped low, the flame burned with unusual brilliance. Its golden light stretched farther than before, painting the marble columns with divine glow. People gathered quickly, sensing that something beyond the ordinary was unfolding. Among them was a young woman named Callista, a humble student of philosophy. She had long dreamed of standing before the flame to ask her question. Her life had been filled with books, yet her heart carried one doubt. She wished to know whether wisdom was endless or if it had limits. When she reached the temple, the crowd parted as if destiny opened a path. She stepped forward, trembling, yet with courage steady in her eyes. The priests lit incense, and silence embraced the gathering like a sacred cloak. Callista knelt before the fire, whispering her question into the night air. The flame did not roar or rise, yet it shimmered with a gentle pulse. Those who watched swore they felt a stillness deeper than silence itself. Callista closed her eyes, and in her mind appeared a vision. She saw a vast sea, endless and shining, with no shore in sight. Above it, countless stars reflected like ideas waiting to be discovered. She realized then that wisdom was like the sea, boundless and alive. No vessel could carry it all, yet each voyage revealed more. When she opened her eyes, tears of clarity touched her cheeks. She bowed her head, thanking the flame not for answers, but for understanding. The crowd murmured, for many had felt her vision as if it were shared. In that moment, the eternal knowledge flame seemed to belong to all hearts. Each person sensed their own questions stirring, reaching for light. The priests later spoke of this night as a blessing from Athena. They said the goddess had chosen Callista as a mirror of wisdom. For knowledge was not about owning truth, but about daring to seek it. Word of Callista's vision spread quickly across the city. Scholars debated its meaning, poets turned it into verse, and children repeated it in play. Sailors carried the story beyond Athens, sharing it in distant harbors. And everywhere it was told, the flame's influence deepened. For it was no longer just a symbol in Athens, but a story for all. Callista herself returned to her studies with renewed devotion. She became a teacher, guiding her students not with answers, but with questions. Her classrooms echoed with laughter, wonder, and curiosity sparked by her example. She told them, "Wisdom is not a cup to be filled, but a sea to be sailed." Her words inspired generations who saw learning not as duty, but as adventure. Athens began to see itself as a ship guided by the eternal flame. Its citizens became sailors of thought, explorers of truth, voyagers of ideas. This spirit carried into their laws, their art, and their dreams. Every citizen, rich or poor, was reminded that wisdom belonged to them. And so, the story of Callista became forever tied to the flame. She was remembered not as a prophet, but as a seeker like all others. Her courage showed that anyone could approach the fire with a question. That night marked a turning point, when Athens truly became a city of wisdom. The eternal knowledge flame glowed with pride, for its purpose was fulfilled. It did not seek worship, only curiosity, only the hunger for truth. And as long as questions were asked, it promised to shine forever. The eternal knowledge flame soon became a quiet compass in times of change for Athens. As the city grew stronger, so too did the weight of choices placed upon its people. Leaders, merchants, and citizens often looked to the flame for silent guidance. They knew it could not speak, yet it seemed to steady their thoughts. In the council chambers, wise men lit small lamps from the sacred fire. They carried them into debates, believing the goddess watched through its light. Decisions were not made in haste, but with patience drawn from the flame. Athenians believed true strength was not in conquest, but in understanding. It was not enough to win a battle. One had to win with justice. Not enough to build wealth. One had to share it with fairness. This spirit began to define Athens, setting it apart among nations. Artists too drew inspiration from the fire's glow, filling walls with vibrant murals. Scenes of gods and mortals blended, each stroke carrying whispers of wisdom. Sculptors carved marble figures that seemed alive, touched by divine thought. Every piece of art was seen not as decoration, but as dialogue. It spoke of beauty, balance, and the pursuit of truth beyond surface. The flame's glow reached the theaters, where playwrights crafted stories of humanity. Their dramas carried lessons about courage, fate, and moral choice. Audiences sat beneath the stars, hearts stirred by words born of fire. They laughed, wept, and reflected together, bonded by wisdom disguised as entertainment. Even in the marketplace, where noise filled every corner, its presence lingered. Merchants remembered that their trade was more than profit. It was service. A deal struck unfairly was believed to dim the inner spark of the flame. Thus, honesty became currency, as valuable as gold in the city. Travelers often marveled at Athens, calling it a place where wisdom breathed. They described streets alive with conversation, where even strangers debated openly. Children recited verses, elders shared parables, and artisans explained their craft. The city seemed less like stone and more like a living book, and at its center, always, burned the flame that inspired every page. But wisdom is not only joy, it is also responsibility. The Athenians understood this, for the flame reminded them constantly. When disputes grew heated, citizens returned to the temple for clarity. The fire's calm reminded them to seek peace instead of division. It was not weakness to compromise, but wisdom to preserve harmony. Such lessons spread slowly across generations, shaping culture and law alike. Young leaders trained their voices by the flame, learning to argue with reason. Their speeches carried not the weight of power, but the strength of truth. Athens began to shine not only for its beauty, but for its thought. Visitors carried home stories of a city guided by light, not fear. They spoke of a people unafraid to question, unafraid to learn. Some even tried to kindle their own fires in distant lands. Yet none glowed with the same enduring spirit as Athena's gift. For this flame was not bound to oil or wood, but to purpose. Its endurance lay in the devotion of those who sought knowledge. As long as a single question was asked, the fire could never die. The Athenians knew this truth, and so they guarded it with reverence. Not with weapons, but with the promise of inquiry and learning. And in this promise, Athens became more than a city. It became a symbol, a light in the story of humanity. And the eternal knowledge flame was its beating heart, silent yet eternal. In time, the eternal knowledge flame became more than Athens' treasure. It became the soul of its people. Its light shaped not just philosophy and art, but the rhythm of daily life. Fishermen rose before dawn and offered silent thanks before casting nets to sea. Mothers whispered prayers of clarity while teaching their children letters and numbers. The flame's glow was remembered in every small act of learning and care. Yet it also called upon Athens to rise to greater responsibility. For wisdom is not only for the self, but for the good of all. The leaders of the city gathered often in its glow to debate new laws. Each carried the awareness that their decisions would shape generations yet unborn. In the temple, they reminded themselves that Athena valued fairness above pride. To rule wisely was greater than to rule strongly. Merchants echoed this lesson, ensuring trade flowed not through deceit but trust. A dishonest weight or false measure was said to dim the flame's blessing. So honesty became as sacred as the goddess's gift itself. Theaters, too, grew rich in meaning, filled with plays of choice and consequence. The audience was not passive, but alive with thought and reflection. For every story mirrored the eternal fire, showing paths of justice or folly. Athenians left not only entertained, but wiser, guided by the lessons of art. The flame became the pulse of their democracy, silent yet ever present. Citizens believed their voices mattered because the goddess had taught equality. In the Agora, debates rang clear, sometimes fierce, but never without purpose. Each word was a spark, adding to the fire of shared understanding. Athens thrived, its streets alive with laughter, discussion, and invention. Travelers arrived daily, not seeking gold, but the wisdom that flowed like air. They wrote home of a city where questions were honored as much as answers. Some stayed, drawn to the light of learning that never dimmed. Others carried stories abroad, spreading the legend of the flame farther still. It became known as a universal light, belonging to all who sought truth. Children played at being philosophers, pretending to hold debates in courtyards. Even their games echoed the fire, training minds to wonder and explore. Elders told tales of the goddess, reminding youth that wisdom was Athena's gift. They said the flame was proof that mortals could share in the divine, that every human mind carried a spark of eternal clarity, and as long as that spark was fed, darkness could never prevail. This belief bound the people of Athens together in unity and pride. But with such pride came challenge, for wisdom tested hearts as much as minds. Some began to question whether they truly honored the flame. Did they live by its lessons or merely admire its beauty? The priests urged constant humility, reminding all that knowledge was endless. One can never claim to hold it all, they warned, for the sea is boundless. This humility became the true strength of Athens, for it reminded them to keep learning, to keep seeking, never to stop. Generations passed, yet the eternal knowledge flame remained unchanged, its fire steady, its message eternal, its influence woven into every life. And though times shifted, one truth endured. Athena's flame was never still. It lived in questions, in choices, in the courage to search for truth. And as long as Athens remembered this, the city itself would never fade. The eternal knowledge flame glowed steadily, a constant reminder that wisdom was not bound by time. Generations rose and passed, yet the fire never dimmed, never flickered with uncertainty. It burned in the temple, but also in the hearts of those who sought truth. Children of Athens grew up watching its glow, hearing its stories in bedtime tales. They learned early that the flame was not a relic, but a living guide. Parents spoke of it when teaching patience, kindness, and the courage to question. The flame became a silent teacher, shaping character long before formal lessons began. Its presence reminded everyone that to be Athenian was to be thoughtful, not only to live, but to live with purpose, clarity, and balance. Philosophers found endless inspiration in its quiet endurance. They gathered in gardens and porticos, debating under the open sky. Some saw the flame as proof of divine presence among mortals. Others believed it symbolized the unquenchable thirst of the human spirit. Each perspective added another layer to Athens's growing tapestry of thought. The city's schools and academies echoed with voices fueled by its silent glow. Young minds were trained to question, to reason, to seek truth without fear. No idea was too small, no question too simple to be considered. In this way, the flame expanded far beyond its temple walls. It lived in scrolls, in speeches, in the rhythm of civic life. Travelers who came to Athens often described the flame in awe. They wrote of a city not ruled by fear, but illuminated by wisdom. They spoke of debates in the Agora where every citizen could raise a voice. They marveled that power was shared, that thought could guide law and justice. Athens became known not only for beauty and art, but for the courage to think. The eternal knowledge flame was the unspoken heart of this identity. It whispered that knowledge was not possession, but a journey, that every mind had the power to shape the world if nurtured with care. Stories spread far beyond Greece of a city guided by fire and reason. Some called Athens the cradle of thought, a place where light touched humanity. Others spoke of Athena's blessing, believing the goddess herself smiled upon the city. Yet within Athens, the people knew the flame was more than legend. It was a challenge, a constant reminder to live wisely and well. It demanded honesty in trade, fairness in rule, compassion in daily life. It offered no commands, only the quiet call to reflection and balance. Even in times of struggle, its glow steadied anxious hearts. When storms shook the sea, sailors prayed not only for safety, but for clarity. When disputes divided friends, they sought the flame's calm before reconciling. It was as if the fire itself carried a rhythm of peace. And so Athens flourished, not because it was free of conflict, but because it listened. It listened to the wisdom carried in the quiet flame of eternity. The people knew that greatness was not measured in conquest, but in thought, not in wealth hoarded, but in knowledge shared, not in silence of obedience, but in harmony of voices raised together. And so the eternal knowledge flame endured, more than fire, more than symbol. It became a living presence, woven into the soul of Athens itself, a promise to each generation: seek, question, learn, and the flame will never fade. The eternal knowledge flame burned through ages, untouched by time, untouched by silence. It stood in the temple, yet lived in the voices of all who dared to question. Athens changed, empires rose, and the world beyond shifted with tides of history. But the flame remained steady, its glow carrying wisdom like a quiet river. It was more than fire. It was memory, promise, and the courage of thought. The Athenians taught their children that the flame was a gift, not possession. It could not be owned, only shared, only carried in the heart. And so they passed it forward, one story, one lesson, one spark at a time. Travelers carried tales of the flame beyond seas and borders, into distant lands. They spoke of a city that shined not by conquest, but by clarity of mind. They told of Athena's gift, a light that invited all to seek truth. Soon, the eternal flame was not only Athens' treasure, but humanity's symbol. It lived in libraries, in classrooms, in the quiet of scholars' study. It lived in the laughter of children asking questions that puzzled their elders. It lived in the voices of those who sought justice over power. And it lived in the resilience of those who believed thought could change the world. The flame endured not by oil or stone, but by devotion to learning. Every question asked was fuel. Every lesson shared a new spark of fire. Generations understood this truth and kept the flame alive with reverence. For wisdom is not a monument. It is a journey, always unfinished. It asks us to walk further, to see deeper, to understand beyond ourselves. Athenians knew this, and so their city became more than a place. It became a beacon, a symbol of what it means to be human. To seek, to wonder, to doubt, and to discover, this was the true gift. And though centuries passed, the eternal flame never wavered. Its glow can still be seen, not in temples alone, but in human spirit. Wherever minds are free to think, its fire quietly flickers in the shadows. Wherever voices rise in debate, the flame burns between their words. Wherever stories are told, wherever truth is pursued, the flame still guides. It whispers that knowledge belongs to no one, yet belongs to everyone. It reminds us that to learn is to live, and to share is to endure. This is the legacy of Athena's gift, the light of eternal clarity. The eternal knowledge flame is not bound to Athens, nor to marble stone. It is bound to every soul that dares to ask, dares to wonder. It lives in every teacher, every student, every seeker of wisdom. And as long as even one spark remains, the fire will never fade. For the flame is eternal not because it resists time, but because it grows. It multiplies in the hearts of those who believe in its silent strength. Athens gave the world this gift, and the world carries it still. So when you see a child's eyes light up with a question, the flame is there. When you hear a voice speak truth against falsehood, the flame is there. When you read words that challenge you to think deeper, the flame is there. And when you pause in silence to wonder at the mystery of life, the flame is there. The eternal knowledge flame of Athena is not only a story, it is a guide. It calls us to honor truth, to value wisdom, and to walk the endless path of learning. And so the story ends, not with silence, but with a question. For the flame asks not to be worshipped, but to be lived. And its glow remains eternal, wherever knowledge is sought and wisdom shared.